Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00 and today's thoughts and theories on episode 6, Onyx, for the Halo TV show. A little bit more of a tame episode, but there's some significantly good parts throughout the episode, and I think really, to briefly summarise before we get into the details, it feels like a kind of a setting the stage kind of an episode, where a lot of the storylines have kind of come together and it's kind of laying the groundwork for what comes next, so to speak. In either case, we're going to continue to follow things in a sequential manner, going from scene to scene, except at the very end when a lot of things happen simultaneously, so we'll group those few bits together. I'll let you know when we get to those points, just for the sakes of clarity, as this episode progresses. As usual, made notes, bear with me while I reference to them throughout the episode, and let's dive into this. Roll the intro. So we kick this episode off straight away with a combat scene of the Spartan-III's assaulting the Covenant corvette. That pretty much rules out my theories on perhaps Blue Team coming into the fold entirely. So it was a good theory, but it was pretty much shot down the very following episode. So it's by the by. Perez is a Spartan now, somehow. I'm not exactly sure how that's happened or how much time has passed since the Fall of Reach to now, but it seems like at least it feels like a really quick turnaround. I know that really the travel between star systems, even towards the end of the war for UNSC ships in particular, was still between days to weeks worth of travel, even through slip space. So there must have been some elapse of time, but of course Perez had to have left Reach and gotten to Onyx in order to become a Spartan. It just feels like a really rapid turnaround. It's a bit odd. My problem initially with this scene, I will say that I did have initially a big problem with this, and it lingers. There is still a little bit of a problem in my mind, but again, I'm kind of happy to put it by the wayside. My problem was based on the idea that Spartan-IIIs were orphans of the war. Covenant would arrive at a planet, they'd glass them, and these young children would be survivors, and it was thus that much easier to enlist them into the Spartan program because they had no parents to worry about. You didn't have to replace them with a Flash clone, and they already had that burning hatred of the Covenant in their gut to kind of motivate them through the process. So they were conscripted from as young as the age of 4. Then they were trained under Kurt 051 and Chief Mendez, the same man who trained the Spartan-IIs, until they were around 14 years of age, where they were then given the Project Chrysanthemum Spartan-III augmentation procedures, which included giving them the kind of a precursor augmentation, the thyroid implant, which kind of synthetically aged them. It brought on early onset puberty at the age of 14, kind of rushed them through it and rushed them through a growth spurt to get them kind of out the other side as kind of a fully grown adult body, even though they were still only 14 years old. The motivation behind that being because once you're giving the augmentations, if you go through a growth spurt after having the augmentations, it can result in like irreparable bone pulverization amongst many other side effects. So initially my trouble with this scene was that obviously my gut reaction, my knee-jerk reaction is that obviously the Spartans, they're children, they're trained, then they're augmented, you know, and even I think even Halsey's quote in Halo 4.
Children's minds are more easily accepting of indoctrination. Their bodies more adaptable to augmentation. The result was the ultimate soldier.
That quote was stuck in my head, and it made me think, well, how can Perez then be a Spartan-III? She was neither enlisted into the Spartan-III program as a child, trained under a Spartan-II, or augmented at the age of 14. But of course, when you really think about it, once they're synthetically aged, their bodies are consenting adults age, even if they aren't physically consenting adults. So the age category thing doesn't really apply here. But it still bothers me that she was able to become a Spartan-III as an adult in a very short space of time. That's much more akin to the Spartan-IVs. The Spartan-IVs, you could augment a consenting adult and turn them into a Spartan-IV. With the Spartan-IIIs, the whole point behind the Spartan-IIIs was that they were orphans that grew up, and then you know even if you synthetically age them, they're augmented and they become fully grown Spartan-IIIs. And it goes back to that simple nomenclature argument, in that the reason the Spartans were called Spartans, the reason the Spartan-IIs are called Spartans, the Spartan-1s are called Spartans, the Spartan-IIIs are called Spartans, are because they are patterned after the ancient Spartans of Greece, whom would go on agoge at the age of between 6 and 7 years old, where they would then enter into a form of military training in the ancient Greek state. That's the whole idea behind them being called Spartans, which is why I also loosely had somewhat of an issue or a soft chip on my shoulder about the Spartan-IVs, because they weren't trained from a very young age like the original Spartans were for agoge, and like the predecessing classes for augmented Spartans were. They were fully grown consenting adults, and they're just given augmentations and then like kind of retroactively called Spartans to kind of club them together with the other Spartans. So I had a problem with the nomenclature, and I still have that problem here. I just don't understand how Perez can go from being just a soldier travelling an indeterminate amount of time to Onyx, and then seemingly the next time we see her she's already a Spartan-III, she's augmented and this, that and the other. That being said, we don't actually ever see any of these Spartans, any of these Spartan-IIIs wearing SPI armour, actually performing superhuman feats, aside from when they impact the outer hull surface of the Corvette when they initially assault it. That impacts quite hard, but that could just as easily be chalked up to that's the armour, because the armour is the SPI armour, semi-powered infiltration armour, so it has a degree of like power assist to it, which could deal with that impact, and it might have hydrostatic gel systems and stuff to deal with that impact. You know, it's a degree of plot armor, but in either case, I don't see any of the Spartans do anything that could be considered a superhuman feat outside of what the armor is already capable of offering them. So it might even be, and I would regret this if this was like actually what has happened, is that the Spartan-IIIs aren't actually augmented humans. They're just humans wearing SPI armor. You know, they've given additional training under a Spartan II, in this case Kai, but they're just normal humans wearing SPI armor. That would be a big misstep if that's the case. In either case, after they failed the mission, it's revealed that it's actually a war game simulation, which is kind of cool. It's actually cool to see a war game simulation in this universe in this regard, and how the Spartans kind of load into it. I know obviously they're different timelines, they're different kind of alternate universes and stuff like that, but I like the idea that that's kind of what's happening behind the scenes when you're playing multiplayer. Once the simulation actually terminates, Kai, who again is now fully confirmed as occupying the role of Kurt 051 from the original mainline lore, she references sort of significant tropes of the core lore, including kind of the 3-to-1 ratio in regards to how space battles are fought, in that generally speaking, in order for the odds to be even, so to speak, you need 3 UNSC ships to every 1 Covenant ship. There's a little bit of tension following this between Kai and Perez, and then we very quickly cut away to Parangoski and Ackerson. Now this scene is actually an allegory of the methods of ONI, of the Office of Naval Intelligence. Now Parangoski speaks on the T, and speaks about its origins and this, that, and the other, really kind of soups it up to be this exquisite, rare tea, etc., etc., and then breaks the illusion of its origin to kind of drive home the idea that it's actually, it's not the truth of that matters, it's the story that goes with it, so to speak. It's the story that gives value to whatever the story applies to, which mirrors the way in which the Office of Naval Intelligence operate. They weave intricate stories on the series of events that they want to project out into the world, that they're sewing and threading this narrative, so to speak, and putting this story out to the wider humanity, telling them what the true picture and what the true events are panning out like, and people are kind of just accepting it and take it on board, when in reality it's just the story and doesn't actually accurately represent the true reality of the events taking place. This scene's just kind of a nice allegory to that. After the title screen, we actually get Kai engaging in the simulation of the battle at Reach at Highcom Tower. The point of the scene, I think, just sort of surface kind of judging it, is to set a precedent for the future scenes of conflict between Kai and Ackerson, on the true realities of the events leading up to and slightly after the fall of Reach. In this particular scene, Ackerson's silver tongue gets him out of it, and we move on to find Chief, Soren, Halsey, Lyra, Quan, all have arrived on Onyx. After Soren and Chief kind of quickly confirm that they're still making Spartans, Quan follows her vision, hallucination, thing of the religious leader from Sanctuary. I'm still kind of on the fence about this, but I'm humouring it to see where it goes. As she actually walks around the forests of Onyx, there's this eerie feeling that I get, but I think it's because of my familiarity with the lore, in knowing that the planet of Onyx is actually an artificial world. It's a Forerunner created world, and that literally just below the surface crust of the planet, it's just an intricate, interlinked matrix of Onyx Sentinel robotic machines. It gives an eerie kind of I'm looking at the scenes of her moving through the forest, and it just has this eerie kind of unsettling, unnatural kind of feel to it. But I think I'm superimposing that onto the scene as opposed to it actually being part of the scene. But I'd love to hear from people whom perhaps aren't familiar with the lore or the extended lore of the Halo universe, people who are either not gamers entirely and are coming just into the TV series kind of cold turkey, or people who have played the games but haven't really read the books and gotten into the deep lore there. Did these scenes have a similar effect to you? Did it feel eerie to you, or is it just me that I'm superimposing that? I'd love to hear. Soren and Liera depart to look for Kessler, and Chief moves to engage a security squad that are after Quan. There's a very brief interaction between Soren and Chief here where I love Soren's line, "You don't have your armour, you're all beat up, you don't have your armour." And Chief kind of responds knowingly, "Go get your son." The subtext to this particular interaction being, I know I don't have my armour, and I don't need it. He's just dealing with this small squad of security personnel. It's kind of a no. It seems like a bit of a subtext there. The next scene we get of Chief is him engaging in combat with the security personnel and him showing kind of out of armor superhuman battle prowess, which is what you expect of a Spartan, and something I haven't seen from the Spartan-IIIs in this episode. And I don't think we see it at all from any of the Spartan-IIIs for the entirety of the episode. I'm willing to wait until, kind of the next couple of episodes to see if they start demonstrating superhuman capabilities, but from what I've seen so far, they don't. Chief does. He really quickly kind of puts down the squad before ultimately being surrounded and doesn't really seem particularly bothered by it. It's almost like he kind of planned to be captured. Quan comes across another one of those kind of wells that very similar to the one that was on Madrigal, her home planet. I know people call it a well, and I call it a well, but I think it's probably more likely that it's kind of an access way for monitors and sentinels to go between the outside atmosphere of the planet and the inner workings down below, the ancient Forerunner structures and things like that below the surface. In either case, Quan jumps into it because she's being pursued by security personnel. She falls down quite a long distance and then is stopped by kind of an anti-gravity lift at the bottom, or an inertial dampening energy barrier or something like that. Stops her from just face planting and splattering on the floor, and is suddenly confronted by Halsey, and they begin moving through the system together. The dialogue from Halsey in this particular scene suggests that she's worked on Onyx for extended periods of time in her past, similar to how she did on, or within Castle Base on Reach. Her awareness of Onyx really shouldn't be a thing, because although she's evidently very high up in the Office of Naval Intelligence, even though she's a civilian contractor, Onyx was a closely guarded secret. It was an only black site. It wasn't on any maps, it wasn't on any star charts, it wasn't on any records whatsoever. The only things that were on this planet was Camp Currahee, which is where the Spartan-IIIs were trained, and an Oni research black site, where they were researching the Forerunner artifacts and facilities on the planet. That's the only things that were there. So Halsey having knowledge on this planet, although it telegraphs that she's obviously got prior knowledge and experience with Forerunner artifacts, and thus, the Forerunners aren't such an unknown to her as they are to most other people in the UNSC, she shouldn't know about this at this point in the lore. Following this, we end up with the Arbiter giving himself the kind of TV show equivalent of the Mark of Shame. Seeing an elite partially armored is actually kind of cool to see the sort of the structure of their musculature, their broadness. It's intimidating as far as like their build is concerned. As we know, McKee has convinced that the Arbiter is actually the true kind of finder of the Halo, and convinced him to pursue his own goals to spite the Prophets. This, I still believe, is the beginning of the Heretic Leaders story, so to speak. There is some obvious reluctance and suspicion from some of the other ship's crew regarding the Arbiter and McKee's intentions and their lack of contact with High Charity and the Prophets, but the Arbiter does very well to quickly quell this. Cortana is seemingly in a tenuous kind of alliance with McKee due to their shared situation of being expendable if they are no longer useful. We get back to the wargame simulation, and the squad actually finally succeeds in their mission. The point of this scene, however, isn't to show that the Spartan-3s are learning and getting better at combat. It's actually to establish that once the mission is achieved, there are no longer any enemies. That just wouldn't happen in a real world combat scenario. They're not going to board a ship filled with Covenant, fight their way to the bridge, and then achieve the mission, and then all the Covenant just go like, okay, we're good, and then they just leave. No, you're going to have to fight through them again. The fact that the simulation effectively terminates almost at that point, that there is no opposition at that point, clearly telegraphs one thing. And that is that the single goal of the simulation is to achieve the objective. To get that spike device thing and insert it into the ship, to either capture it and remote pilot it back to UNSC controlled space, maybe as part of Operation Red Flag, that may have leaders on board that they can then capture and use to barter a truce, as was the plan in mainline lore, or just to kind of kill the ship systems and make it useless. Maybe then being able to board it and reverse engineer it, strip it for engine parts or weapons and things like that. I don't know. In either case, the whole goal of this simulation training is to get the Spartans to fight to the bridge to deploy the objective. Once they do that, everything else after that doesn't matter, because the assumption is they're going to die. It's a suicide mission. Perez picks up on this, on the fact that the extraction afterwards is too easy, and realises there's something wrong there that she can't quite place her finger on, and she tries to confide in Kai about it and just try to let her know about it. Kai kind of somewhat dismisses it, but you can tell it's kind of planted a seed that she'll keep circling back to as the episode continues to develop. Next, we see that the Chief has been restrained by the entire squad, but I assure you there's not enough people there to hold him still. Chief's confident smile speaks volumes. The squad leader from a couple of episodes back when they went to visit Grad Relay is an Oni operative and is rightly an overconfident asshole, as they would be. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that blows up in her face. Chief actually waits for the opportune moment while they're trying to anchor the harnesses that they've attached to him to the floor so that he can't physically move. He waits until there's just enough connected that they start to like relax, but not enough that it limits his motion too badly. Takes that opportune moment and then takes out the entire squad without even breaking a sweat. And then we cut to show that Ackerson was watching this take place, and they use that footage to question Kai and ensure her loyalties lie with Oni and no one else. He spins kind of the story that Chief must have escaped from Reach with the help of McKee, meaning he's now in alliance with the Covenant and is fighting against the UNSC and attacking Onyx. And at face value, the evidence, if presented to somebody who doesn't know any better, seems rather compelling. However, Axon makes a mistake to reveal the classified materials to Kai that actually adds to her suspicions of Oni and Axon as the events kind of play out, but we'll circle back to that. Next scene we get with Cortana and McKee kind of flesh out their circumstances a little further and kind of establish that McKee's life is depending on finding the Halo, but she's been unable to actually access the artifact and find the Halo, as it for some reason isn't just responding to her the same way as it had before. And if McKee dies, Cortana is no longer of use either. So Cortana attempts to convince McKee to give her access to the ship's comm systems so that she can help. And we'll come back to that shortly too. Next we get Chief moving through the facility, and I'll be honest, how he isn't seen by anyone is beyond me. He's a near 7 foot tall super soldier moving around a facility he isn't familiar with, within visual range of tons of people. So how he's not spotted, don't know. Chief finds his way to a room where he can access the facility's map, so to speak, digital map, and before he finds what he's looking for, Kai enters, fully armoured up, ready to stop the Chief. Tensions actually start to boil over, but Chief refuses to fight in this regard, and simply reasons with her while she just attacks him. The motivation behind this being that if he doesn't engage in the fight, she may gradually start to realise that there's more to this situation than is meeting the eye, so to speak. That it might start to convince her that she's perhaps only seeing a small part of the picture. Again, the whole motive behind this is in stark contrast to a very similar scene we got from the end of Season 1. In Season 1, Kai assists Chief when he is being attacked by Vanek and Riz and attempting to be kind of detained. Chief fights every step of the way in that conflict, and Kai does anything that she can to help him. In this scene, she is the one following the orders, and Chief refusing to fight paints a very different picture versus the earlier scene in the earlier season. His refusal to fight shows that he isn't truly her enemy, and that he isn't there through some alliance with McKee or the Covenant. He's there because of Oni's involvement in the fall of Reach. The conflict continues to play out, and Kai finally knocks out the Chief and leaves, but she's carrying the burden of her desire to follow orders, but also the loyalty to the Chief and the knowledge that Chief has kind of revealed to her through this engagement. Next scene we get is Ackerson and Parangoski actually watching this conflict play out between Chief and Kai. Ackerson here seems like he's starting to be not entirely devoid of regret for his actions. There's these moments, there's these hesitations in him. You can see him kind of reconsidering his actions, but Parangoski coldly sets him straight once more. Shabana Azim's portrayal of Parangoski this season has been flawless, worlds apart from the portrayal from Season 1. She is exactly the cold, calculated Commander-in-Chief of the Office of Naval Intelligence that we know she is. Lies within lies, manipulations within manipulations, and layers of secrecy so deep you can't see the bottom. That is Parangoski to a T. Parangoski then moves into the command center, is told that they're receiving an unknown broadcast that's not on a UNSC frequency. She knows what this is, tells people to give her the room, they all leave, and then Cortana reveals herself. The next few scenes kind of flick back and forth between all characters in this episode, so we'll just stick with Parangoski for now. Cortana reveals herself and kind of gives over critical information about the Covenant and the fleet and their seeking of the Halo's current location for reasons known only really to Parangoski. She even says that, you know, the likelihood of a surprise attack on a fleet of this size still isn't a guaranteed success story for the UNSC, so I don't think Parangoski would be stupid enough to just go for a full frontal all-out assault on this fleet. In either case, Parangoski thanks her, tells her to keep feeding them information from the Covenant until she's no longer able to do so. It's at this point that we get this moment where Cortana asks, "Will I be remembered?" And I think this may be the first moments of Cortana's exploration of her own mortality. How human she really is. Is she, if she's a machine, or if she's got a soul almost. And if this is that, if this moment of questioning, of asking if she'll be remembered is exactly that, this could be the beginnings of the process that she was eventually going through during the events of Halo 4. This could well be a narrative for Cortana then that plays out over many seasons to come. Quickly touching base with Quan and Halsey, they follow the subterranean facility through before coming to a chamber where Oni staff are researching a structure in the centre of the room, and Miranda is revealed here and is leading the research and hints towards Halsey making a mistake, all the while Quan is kind of focused on this structure in the middle of the room, which is just kind of a stone circle, harkening back to kind of the stone circles we saw in Halo Infinite. Very obviously going to be something like a translocation portal. In either case, Halsey being told that she made a mistake didn't go down well. Looks like she really struggled to swallow that one. But I think we're most definitely looking at a translocation portal, either to the Halo or to kind of an intermediary area or something like that. I'm not sure exactly, but this might be where Quan's kind of role, her storyline, comes into play. Next episode is actually going to be pivotal for what comes next, I think, in regards to Quan's storyline and the grander storyline for the end of this season and going into next season. And I have some theories, but we'll touch on that shortly. Next scene we get is with Kai in the wargame simulation, actually on the same wargame simulation that the Spartan-IIIs were running, and Ackerson arrives in somewhat of an approximation of regret that he didn't really feel like he should have sent her to Chief. It could just be a manipulation. I think it's a feign, but when Kai questions him on the fact that the simulation prepares the Spartans to board the ship and achieve the objective, but nothing after, he dismisses it as just being for training purposes. Even his use of words here, like he emphasizes the word our recruits, he emphasizes the word our, kind of trying to invoke ideas of being united and working together and a kind of them-us mentality. Kai's suspicions of Oni and their kind of lack of care towards the Spartans and the very obvious suicide mission that she's now finally discovering all come to a head, and she realises that Chief was right. Axon reveals that indeed he did leave Chief on Reach without his armour and basically left the colony to die. It was a willing sacrifice, so to speak. In spite of Axon's reassurances and orders, Kai leaves and attempts to save the Chief from being killed by a squad that Axon has just sent to kind of finish the job. Over with Chief, Cortana reveals herself to him and convinces him to get up, letting him know that she's with McKee and the Arbiter, the very elite that killed Vanek. That motivates Chief for kind of something of a revenge story. Cortana then aids the Master Chief in moving through the facility, locking and unlocking doors and flashing lights to direct what way he's supposed to go, and incapacitating security personnel by like interrupting and overloading their communications gear. It's very similar in tone to the Superintendent AI from Mombasa and the Rookie guiding his way around the city at night to reunite with the Alpha 9 squad in Halo ODST. So, great to see. Cortana leads him eventually to the artifact in the Onyx facility. We go back over to McKee, and she is tossed before the Arbiter, with the priest now seemingly knowing McKee is lying and has been unable to access the artifact. She seems in genuine fear of her life at this point, and the Arbiter steps forward to exact punishment. It is at this moment that he actually attacks the elites who brought McKee to the bridge. A fight breaks out between the elites loyal to the Arbiter and those loyal to the Prophets, and in the confusion, McKee seizes the opportunity to crawl along the floor to the artifact as it begins to glow. Obviously, the two artifacts are kind of connected together, and I suppose it's sensing the presence of Chief at one side and McKee at the other side, and they both turn on roughly at the same time. And ultimately, that's where the episode ends, on that huge cliffhanger of what comes next. So this is where I think it's all driving towards. I think Chief and McKee activate the artifacts and it shows the way to the Halos. I don't think it would necessarily directly show the location of the Halo. I've got a feeling it's going to show the location of that portal that Quan's near. In either case, when that happens, both the Arbiter and his loyal Heretic Elites will see that. Let's be honest, that's where that's going. He's going to be the Heretic leader, isn't he? It seems logical now. He's against the Prophets, he's slain some of his own brothers, he's going for the Halos of his own, he's going to find out the truth eventually. He is the Heretic leader. He has to be. But in either case, he'll see the location of the portal, so will Chief. And if that does work out in that regard, that means the Covenant fleet are going to come to Onyx, and they're going to attack Onyx, and that's going to be, well, that's going to be an insane space battle, I'd imagine, as well as a load of other stuff going on the ground. Kai is going to get to Chief just in time before that kill squad goes to get him. They will probably both fight through loads of Oni security teams, seek out information, possibly aided by Cortana, of the location of Master Chief's armor within the Onyx facility. Chief will get armored up, and then eventually they'll make their way down to where Quan, Halsey, and Miranda are, and the portal will be activated. Chief will go through to whatever is on the other side, and we might end up getting kind of Kai staying behind with the Spartan-3s to fight the Covenant that are now on Onyx, in a very similar kind of vein to what was going on in the book, The Ghosts of Onyx. In either case, the fact that the portal is there, it suggests that it will lead to Halo, but might not lead to Halo. It's yet to be discovered, basically. And we still have that looming threat of both the Covenant fleet that may come to Onyx. We also have the threat of the Gravemind, as it is definitely the Gravemind that is the monster that Quan keeps referencing from the earlier episode. In the grand scheme of things, it's very much a kind of a scene-setting episode. Fantastic moments of action in it, even though they're battle simulations. Some really great extrapolations of the storylines for the Arbiter, the Heretic leader, if you will. But really, the purpose of this episode is that many of the disparate storylines have now all merged together. All the events are kind of orbiting around each other. I think the real purpose of this episode is to kind of set the scene to what happens next, bringing all the characters together to kind of a grand engagement, so to speak, that will see each character fulfill their necessary kind of purpose for this season, which will then roll out onto the following season with, you know, the consequences of those actions being the kind of the driving force behind Season 3. Kai is loyal to the Chief, but is also responsible somewhat for the Spartan-3s now, and she doesn't want them sent on suicide missions, even though that is kind of what they were created for. We might see a Kurt-style sacrifice from Kai. If it happens at the end of this season, I think that'll be too soon. I think we need a little bit more time with Kai and the Spartan-3s and their reactions and interactions with each other before we go down that route. It needs to hit that emotional tone a little harder, I think. I know that things have shifted somewhat off of our expectations based on kind of the known events of the series within the games that we're so familiar with anyway. But I feel like that's kind of a good thing. If it was following beat for beat what happens in the games, we'd know exactly what comes next. We'd know, well, nothing would be a surprise, everything would be expected, and although it would be cool as hell to have kind of a live action retelling of the events of the Fall of Reach and Halo CE, I think it would be a notably missed opportunity to take a different direction and keep us guessing on what the hell comes next. I think killing Keyes in episode 4 was the first kind of big move that kind of changed the course of things, because we knew mainline lore, Captain Keyes is on the Pit of Autumn, takes Chief to the first Halo, and a lot of story plots within the events of Halo CE kind of orbit around Captain Keyes. Killing him off at Reach was the first big thing that said, no, things here aren't going to go the same as they did in the books, and they're not going to go the same way that they did in the games. This shift pushes things off the table, pushes kind of the known events off the table and goes, then let's keep you guessing on what's going to actually happen next. And that kind of ups the ante. It makes everything feel a little bit more at risk, a little bit more tenuous. There's a possibility that anyone at any time could just be axed and that's it. And I kind of like that uncertainty. It's quite engaging. So how things have been kind of changing, and how like some of the known tropes of the lore in some regards and some of the unknown tropes of the lore kind of coming together, and it's kind of mixing together, is leaving me more and more in kind of a place of not knowing what comes next. And I'm actually finding that there's more theories that are kind of cropping up in response to this uncertainty than would have possibly happened if we just followed the known tropes beat for beat, so to speak. Really broad summary, it's an episode that is staging kind of the big prime movers of what comes next. And I think that the last 2 episodes of this season might just set into motion an interesting, engaging, and above all, unexpected series of events that will feed directly into the 3rd series and perhaps pay off narratively, for storytelling purposes and from a storytelling perspective, either during or towards the end of Season 3. Some very loose theories in my mind at the moment, but I'm going to hold them back until I've seen the next couple of episodes, and then maybe I'll bring them forward. It references back to the Flood and the Gravemind. I think there's something coming that will broadcast just how more of an immediate threat the Flood is than we're used to them being, so to speak, at this point in the series of events. All in all, solid episode, some cool action scenes, great fleshing out of what I am now convinced is basically the heretics within the Covenant, and the conflicts of interest between the Chief versus the Office of Naval Intelligence story I think it's going to persist long past this season. I think what's going to happen now is it's still going to be there, it's still going to be present, but it's going to fall away a little bit because other storylines are going to take precedence. The Halo, the Covenant, the Flood is kind of going to override it until a couple of seasons down the line, when the war is over and that falls away, and then the Office of Naval Intelligence there'll be a resurgence of that storyline. That's when we get the Hunt the Truth thing really drive through. I think that's roughly how things seem to be being paced at the moment, at least as far as I can tell. I think before this season is over, we might see Axon realise his mistakes and his missteps, and I feel like he might do something actually to aid the Chief, to actually help the Chief out, which may see him being redeployed to the front lines as he was in the books, but this time it'll be due to Parangoski not liking the fact that he aided the Chief rather than Cortana filing the transfer request and stuff like that on his behalf for him nearly killing Chief and Cortana when they were testing the Mark V platform. Just a theory. I'd love to hear your thoughts, particularly regarding the Heretic Elites. I'd love to know, I'm convinced, I'd like to know your perspective. Do you think this is actually the Heretic Elites? Are the Spartan-IIIs more like a Spartan-IV in this episode, in your opinion? Are they kind of more like just consenting adults that have been augmented? Or, alternatively, are they just not augmented at all? Are they just normal soldiers wearing SPI armour? Not so sure on that one. And I'd love to know your opinions on kind of the ambience, so to speak, of Onyx, particularly if you are not familiar with the games or the books. How did Onyx feel to you, particularly on the surface? Did it feel eerie? Because I got eerie feelings in regards to like when Quan was walking through the forest. It felt odd to me, but I feel like I'm superimposing my knowledge of what Onyx is. Love to know what you think. And until next time.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, consider smashing the like button and leave a comment below on what you'd like me to cover next. Big shout out to my patrons, Spartan10148, the Metarch of my installation, Falcon, Prophet Bear, Mikhail, Sophia, and Ashley, my dutiful monitors, Darian, Scarab, Spartan0137, Anthony, Ghost, Aaron, Chris, Jacob, Sean, Element Zero, Somatic, Jordan J3, Dan, Mr. Keys, Directal, Gunslinger, Jacob, Bandmill, Echo, Evermore, Officer Cat, and Personal Devil, my diligent sub-monitors, my fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers. And all the other patrons who have jumped aboard to support the channel. It means more to me than I can accurately put into words. Another shout out to my Tier 0 Transcendent YouTube members, Spartan137, Jacob, Schmitty, Talia, Fenrir and Born Stellar, and all the other YouTube members keeping my installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. Shout out to John for I don't fucking know. And if you want more of this kind of content, hit the subscribe button and the little bell icon so you don't miss any future videos, and consider jumping aboard yourself as a patron or YouTube member to keep the channel alive and kicking. Thanks again for watching, take it easy everyone, and find peace in the domain.